Hello, everyone. My name is Faith, also known as Imani Hicks. Welcome to the, I believe, third annual Colors event. Each year we try to facilitate either an art show or some type of community experience where we are delving with Black creators, educators, and creatives. This year we are presenting the Colors Virtual Conference. Um, we have a different lineup for each weekend, and today Daryl is presenting his workshop. Please, Daryl, introduce yourself. This is you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Um, my name is Darrell Spearman. I am a writer, singer, songwriter, dancer, performer in New York. And I have a workshop that I wanted to share with you based on writing, but also like storytelling and the impact of voices through technology. Throughout the past few years, we've been all using Zoom and virtual interaction as a way to create together. And I've found being in these spaces virtually, I've found myself really impacted by them in ways that I couldn't imagine before everything happened, before the pandemic and before lockdown. But it seems like even now, this way of connecting is like something that's never going to leave us. I wanted to spend some time with you, whether you consider yourself a writer or not, to express ourselves and find things within each other's voices as we hear each other's stories and see where it takes us. So this is Voices in Technology, Dreams Through Screens, a visual writing experience by Darrell Spearman. Living in a virtual world, each other's stories reverberating through our own spaces, through the art and power of storytelling, visual art and writing is now a major collective impact. Voices and sounds are so impactful, especially now, warming our bones like heated waters washing over stones. Through the powerful use of technology, we remain connected, inspired, and hopeful of our futures as we peer into our screens, sharing with each other senses of endless possibility. How do the voices from your computer, when connecting with your peers virtually, help you with a sense of identity and to recognize your own dreams? So that is mainly a lot of what we're going to focus on today. And when I say it's been a major collective impact, I mean the roles that storytelling and the sounds of our voices play in keeping us connected and keeping us connected to ourselves, and you being a human being and realizing that there's so much more out there besides your initial environment, you know, what you wake up to. And if you spend a day at home all day and you feel disconnected from the world, but then when you log on and you connect with people in a space like this, what does that do for you? I think it would be nice for us to start with an icebreaker. Together, let us recognize the power of voice and the way we interpret the sounds of the voices in our lives. Do you ever recognize yourself carrying the voices of the people in your home environment or from your favorite podcast, your parents, your partner, or friend out into the world with you? What does it feel like? How does it affect the way you interact with the world around you and the way that you perceive the world around you? So I'm going to give us 5 minutes starting now. All right, that was time. Just take a few more seconds to get those last few thoughts out. Chris, you seem like you're ready. I want to hear what you have to say.
All right, ready. So I wrote, voice is a powerful tool because it is both intangible, quote, material, and it can touch slash impact those around you, comma, as well as your own internal plus external environments, um, period. Voice is like a succession of currents.
I want you to elaborate on the currents because I really like that.
voice is like a succession of currents. And visually, I imagine like electrical currents, but then even saying it out loud, like hearing my own voice say that, it sounded like I was imagining like currents under waves, like under the ocean. And I was still thinking about how even currents under the ocean are intangible, but yet they influence so much of that like aquatic environment. So, you know, it's interesting how voice can be both, and voice and currents can be both tools of I guess like change, but they can also be dangerous because electrical currents, if were not kept in check, can be very lethal or deadly, poisonous.
Wow.
Wow. Imani, would you like to share?
Okay. Um, so I didn't write out anything like word for word. It's more so like how I thought of the question. Um, I'm from like California, but I moved to New York for school. And so a lot of the times where I think about the influences of where my voice comes from, I think about home. And like I think about how there's a lot of girls from the hood, but they have like this valley girl like accent, or like this white girl, like, but it's like these girls can also chop you down. Like they're from the hood. So like that's when I think of voices, that's one of them. Where also too, when people hear it, they might write you off as, oh nah, like this white black girl, or like this Oreo, right? But then my experiences when I went to New York is definitely more like like, there is definitely they're on it, they're precise. And I learned a lot of different words, like, like, and if I go back home and I say these words, like people are like, whoa, like you're different, like, oh, and so like for example, I'd be like, it's mad cold, like maybe like what, or I'll say facts. I'm thinking it's just simple, like facts. And they're like, oh, yeah, New York, New York. I'm like, okay. Like, so like, I feel like a lot of my influences comes from either geographical, like emphasis upon where I'm at and like the voices that I'm hearing. That's a difference that I've noticed, but also relational. Like, I wouldn't talk to Daryl the same way that I talk to my mother, but also like in a professional setting too. I wouldn't talk to my professor the same way that I would talk to my supervisor. And so like I guess it, like when I think of these voices creatively, a lot of the times when I write, um I do this intermingling of everything, because creatively it's like free, it should be free flowing, it should be um you picking apart everything all at once, whatever comes to mind, but sometimes, because like I'm a student, I think that I have this preachy voice, it like this like academic, like, oh, I have to talk a certain way, which I feel like it can be limiting. So I feel like I have to watch out for that sometimes. Like sometimes it feels limiting. Like when you ask, like, what does that feel like? It feels limiting because I'm aware, hyper aware of like the different environments impacting my voice.
And just thinking about how when we're in different environments, the rhythm of communication changes. Sometimes we're in spaces where we might feel obligated to speak slower versus spaces where, like in a social, exciting context where you can speak faster and kind of more, comfortably.
I step foot into this new world, confused and unsure of what everything means, my chest heavy, throat thick and bulging, from what I can hear overlaying the sounds of birds. From the apartment, their voices echo behind my back, and I find my lens corrupt. When a stranger looks at me on the 3 train, I wonder, what about me is off? What about me do they hate? It isn't always this way. Sometimes I feel light, like a ballerina gracing marley floors on my tiptoes when I think of my friend Melanie's voice, reminding me that there's only one me, that the world needs me to dance. Yeah, that was it. I tend to refer to what it feels like throughout the day and like the way it shifts. I find that the first like 45 minutes of leaving home, I feel still attached to the environment until I get like more out into the world, and it kind of changes a lot of the time. But sometimes it's more difficult to get to that point. I can still feel things that don't necessarily serve me in the world that I've been holding on to, that may have like latched onto me from the environment that I'm used to. I want to get into a piece that I wrote called Sounds of Your Voices by Darrell Spearman. So this is dedicated to Making Space, which is a BIPOC peer mentorship in Canada, in Edmonton. I want to share this with you guys so you can kind of understand my perception of the sound of voices through my screen when referring to this space. Okay. Decades of suppression unraveling among us, eyes peering into screens, captivated by stories as full and beautiful as a 90-year-old life, as forbidden truths spill through technology, seeping through silence, voices sing finally, reverberating through silent bedrooms, gripping hearts. You were never alone, we sing to each other. Between us, there is enough warmth hovering over our chilled bones to return us all to our homes within. Shameful joys and guilty pleasures told and sent from wall to wall, bouncing around each other's bedrooms, living rooms, and basements. We love each other's shadows. What are you ashamed about? I do the same thing. Unseparated, even with screens between us, the depth of experiences in these voices are enough to inspire conversations resembling spirits using their obedient props to hold each other up. Like the benevolent energy that holds our moon up in night skies, we are so rich in this place. Spirits lifting, hearts pounding of joy, every moment savored before longing off. Before our screens dismiss us for a while, voices linger still until they don't. And when they don't, the warmth and excitement of next time hovers over these bodies and hearts like a determined body of water, easily washing over the stones at its shore. So much water, encouraging silent cries to no longer be quiet, mouths no longer covered, time mixing within our bodies like millions of colors of paint as we share the time within us. I am reminded that memory is a blessing. My blood flows peacefully to the sounds of your voices, like the calm rivers that exist in lands. Your hearts will always belong. So that was Sounds of Your Voices. Um, I hope you got to take that in. I turned my camera off purposely so you guys could get like a sense of what we're going to be doing mainly when we start like writing and sharing.
Hmm. I'm really interested about the choice of the 90-year-old life, like 90-year-old voices. Like, that was so specific. I wonder what that was in reference to.
It was very literal. I'm not sure why the number 90. I guess because that's like something that is considered like incredible if someone lives to see 90 years old. And I assume that a 90-year-old person would have so many stories to tell. Um, so yeah, I say captivated, eyes peering into screens, captivated by stories as full and beautiful as a 90-year-old life. So, you know, that kind of paints a picture of being inspired by other people as they share their stories with you through Zoom calls and stuff like that.
Something that I really liked, and it kind of circled back to the idea of like currents and like wavelength and vibrations, ultimately, sound vibrations, where you say, shameful joys and guilty pleasures told and sent from wall to wall, bouncing around each other's bedrooms, living rooms, and basements. We love each other's shadows. What are you ashamed about? I do the same thing, because it kind of makes me think about like the things that we tell ourselves, like in our room, like affirmations, positive things that stick into the room or stick into a certain environment, or like even the opposite of it, like where maybe you connote, like you think about an environment where somebody told you something negative about yourself or just negative, and you think about how that environment is bad or not welcoming because of the vibrations that was there.
So now we're going to go into a writer circle, which we're familiar with. So this writer circle represents openness, vision. What does one's voice conjure from within you? So we will begin with open mic shared writing. Our cameras are all going to be turned off in this moment so we can all focus on each other's voices and invite each other into our worlds as writers, to explore writing as a form of visual art. What does this story, this poem, this piece through the vastness of one's voice conjure from within you? What do you see? How does it make you feel? What do you feel connected to? So let's note these things as we recognize what voices and technology do for our collective impact or for ourselves, where we go, and senses of personal identity, as each person shares. So this is completely open. Anything that you want to share that you've written, I want to hear it, and we'll all just actively listen.
I definitely would love to share if
Yeah.
that's okay. Yeah. So I am currently writing my book. Um, and so I guess I would love to share maybe a few things that I've been working on. I have a section called Homebody, as well as a section called To Tell the Truth. I'll read one poem from Homebody and then one poem from To Tell the Truth if time permits. Is that okay?
Yes, that is okay. That is more
Okay.
than okay.
Okay. So the first one is called I Love You to the Moon and Back and Around the World and Back Again. A story. Morning, while taking my first breath upon rising, yet still noticing the morning sun's gleam, demonstrating a beam that envies the night moon, peering out into the day's sky. Solar beams absorbing its luminous essence as an intuitive message, providing questions of such lunar light. Moon sitting perky and high, venturing over to the sunny side of things to address such a paradoxical question. Did you honestly feel that you can actually get rid of me overnight? A poem. Morning envies the nights that awaken me. Morning envies the moon in waiting, 1 minute, 1 moment, 1 second. In just a nick of time, today's morning envies inevitable time. About noon, there's something about noon. That snarky reminder of the presence of the moon, making mornings dim light, the reason that not all mornings beam bright. Mourning and mourning for what the world has the capacity to resurrect amongst such time lapses between shut eyes, between the worlds created once eyes are shut, between the time that lapses from morning to noon. What a morning, still so much to accomplish just before noon. This is a poem that I feel like I really love, and I think that it can speak to a lot of voices. So it's untitled, but it's in the Tell the Truth section. Um, Holding on to thorn roses, loving its smell, admiring its structural beauty, feeling a sharp increase of pain from thorns, slowly drawing blood, stilling yet hard to let go. If I let go, who or what will be as beautiful as this rose? What can smell as blessed as this rose? I'd only dare to dream. Because even in my imaginations, such a rose reminds me of a familiar love, a familiar pain. I let go on accident, finally realizing the pain endured by the amount of blood spilled. My instinct was to grasp hold of the false safety provided by this flower, However, as I grazed a nearby daisy, I began to understand that holding on doesn't have to hurt. It shouldn't hurt. Learning that letting go isn't forgetting, but instead being reminded of the thorns specially designed to cut into your skin and twist deeply into flesh. Every now and again, as I pass by roses, I'm reminded of its familiar love, familiar pain. At times, fighting myself from holding on to what was, but holding back because of the promise of what could be. Roses are my first love, but Daisy taught me what love that heals can feel like. Creating a garden of my own, tons of daisies, marigolds, tulips, and in fact, even some roses. I expect some flowers to be more inviting than others, and I can even expect the most beautiful flora to be the most dangerous. What I do not expect any longer is to allow my pain from thorn roses to silence my being into a quiet submission of disengaging with other flora, including roses.
I was listening to your pieces, but I was also listening, like focusing more on the sound of your voice and what I got from it. And like it was so beautiful to hear the way you pronounce some words and the way it sounds like you have to, like you're pushing it out with intention. Like when you said this rose and like I felt like I was being thrust into the air, like I was on a swing on like a playground. And every time you said this, like I was pushed higher into the air, and then by the final this, like I flew into the air. Like it was such a beautiful experience. I felt like I was on a ride in that portion.
This is from my like Sunsets and Soul. Hopefully that could be a book one day, or like a poetry book. But it says eating adventures, and then I have the word written in Korean. And then I wrote miso honey chicken gali, and it's garlic seasoned chicken gali with fried rice. Then I said I tied yogame or yogane chicken gali. I have the I like the atmosphere here. It would definitely be more ideal to eat with someone, but I am blessed nonetheless to be in the right place at the right time. I learned a lot during my travels today. And these are like all notes from, I guess, walking around in the city of Seoul. And like when I went out to eat dinner, and when I found this like bookstore that had these cubicles where you could actually just like how space was respected inside that bookstore. It was like you can just find your own cubby and like sit there without your shoes on and just like eat lunch if you wanted to, and you could just be surrounded by your favorite books. And it was like just this implied harmony, like you were just at a sleepaway camp or something. And this was in the middle of a busy city, but I liked how people took time to actually like enjoy.
Your voice had this pace of like trying to understand your handwriting. So I
Mm.
said, I imagine I imagine like a snake wrapping around, like inching around it every second,
Mm.
and then releasing eventually, like once you would finish that sentence. Okay, so I'm gonna
Oh.
share this. Fuchsias and lavenders and spruces and teals looped around the darkest of skins, bodies in chokeholds as they searched desperately for a love to drink, to foster within. With each lift of this pen, there's a new baby brought in. Who am I to notice this symphony, to speak on such a repetitive melody? Who am I to try to create a bridge, to give our song a climax, to challenge the wise ones before me? God forbid a mud hole is stomped into my chest, or or the black is slapped off my face, or this faggot gets put in his place. For being so true, for having eyes, same vast deep brown as theirs, that just can't unsee once they've seen, once the numbers have been added, once the dots have been connected. Running around in my big white t-shirt, jolly enough to forget to speak when spoken to. Oh, but that was then, and this is now. I'm sorry to get so caught up in what once was. It seems as if I'm just now recognizing what was. Therefore, I think of it often. Pictures painted by my wandering mind, quite often, swings on the playground in the back of their school, pushed into the sky. I just might fly straight into what I see. My mother rising from the bench looking for me. He flew into the sky. A bench full of sisters who had kids suddenly. We came from aching, from longing, from yearning, made from the stars, crystals in the pigment of our brown skins, deep. We came from randomness, and so we laugh because no one knows what all of this truly is. But to live means to have kids, so it is what's happening. So it is what happens, it is what is happening. You see, it feels as if my eyes aren't just mine because I come from two people. Let's do math. Who come from four people, who come from eight, who come from 16. 16 crystals, diamonds wrapped in fuchsias and lavenders and spruces and teals.
I noticed like your S's when you say your S's and it's like seems to like strengthen the words. And so it's like all throughout the poem though, like when like that pops up, it's to me it's very aesthetically pleasing. Um I also I want to talk about how you said, was it I'm gonna stop a mud hole in your chest or something like that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I think that that is a voice, right? That I know I've learned in a specific home environment. And that's why I like creatively. Like creatively, we can take different environments and incorporate it into our writing in a way where um it just creates something new, something fresh, you know?
yeah. Yeah, and I've never used, I haven't used a lot of language that I heard growing up in my writing because I think that for so long just spending so much time learning who I am apart from all of that. I got good at blocking that stuff out. Um, and the more honest I am with myself about, things that have affected me, like the use of the word faggot growing up, coming to terms with my own sexuality and hearing that word a lot from the men in my family, and how that felt. But also like the term, I'm gonna stop a mud hole in your chest, or like slap the black off your face. Those are just some things that a lot of people grow up hearing, like those phrases that seem so simple and like um just constantly use that like we don't realize impact. Okay, so we are now going to do a 20-minute writing prompt. Now, from this is going to be based off of what we just heard from each other and the sounds of our voices. Choose one voice or multiple, whichever voice telling their own story impacted you the most, to focus on as you relay what you felt and where you went. What memory, sentiment, or dream of yours came up? What part of you or part of your life did this writer's voice have access to within you? Does this voice bring you closer to yourself? The information within you, your dreams, or are you on a journey that is unexpected and greater than you, a form of meditation even? Did it access your connection to nature, your longings, desires, parts of you that you dream of coming to play in real space and time? Do not be afraid to explore. Free your mind in this moment. Allow yourself to go anywhere and everywhere with this writing prompt. We are taking each other on our own personal adventures and we are coming back together to relay this information. Have fun, allow yourself to go anywhere and everywhere, even if it sounds quote unquote corny or cheesy or simple or like, just let's free our minds in this moment. All right, guys, that was time.
Yeah.
Hey,
Thank you for this prompt. So
yeah.
much. Like, yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so are we all open to sharing? Or does anyone want to share?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I guess I'll go first. So I It was a free write, so that's how I attacked this prompt. Um, so Christopher, you impacted me the most. Um, so I wrote something very specific, and then I went into a poem. Travel writing, so much richness in our experiences and environment, from what we eat, what we drink, to what we do and where we go. Live in the moment. What you spoke of reminded me of a memory that we had in the Black Writers Collective about your experience, um, talking about traveling and the best fried chicken. But specifically, your writing, it reminded me of the fact of like, you do not have to be perfect, right? You just have to be present. And like, I think like you writing that in that moment, like, it made me just think about so much, specifically about like validating your experiences just by speaking up.
Mm,
Um, and I also wrote about like a dream of mine that came up to travel freely, physically, emotionally, and creatively, all of the leads. It is important because no one would do that work for you and no one knows you like you know you. And so I'm going to get into the poem that like I wrote all of this down and then I got into a poem unknowingly. I didn't it was just, oh, let me write. So roaming around on icy, unfamiliar streets, Jumbotron blaring sights and sounds into the distance, an aroma of an assortment of foods filling the air, telling my stomach a tale of longing for what my eyes can't see. My throat caught up with what my mind is racing about. Therefore, no words coming out, giving shape to meaning, taking a step back and slowly stopping to grasp a hold of senses too appealing for movement, standing in this moment, realizing that moments of stillness captures the overwhelming intensity of movement. I open
wow.
my eyes and with profound reassurance enter a sea of folks drunk in love, raving with lust, strung out from moments without a moment of stillness, wandering about, enjoying others living freely. A shout and a shimmy escapes the depths of my body, which sends bodies into a frenzy. Flags flailing about, shouts vibrating into the unknowing air, ecstatic to know that releasing is freeing. Yeah.
Really just this, like hearing each other's voices coming out of these speakers does something. And like it's filling our bedrooms up right now, or wherever we are sitting at, all of us, like with a moment in time where we can see things. Like we're not even looking at each other right now. That's really
Mm.
powerful.
Like I'll go
Okay,
because
cool.
your piece also informed mine, so I think it's going to
Oh
be
wow.
interesting to see that. They're both visual, and no worries about like copyrights or not. So this is the piece that I started painting during the visualization, um, and I just this is the part that's like I keep wanting to call it crochet, but it's something else, like knitting or something. Um, I know the word.
Embroidery.
Embroidery. Thank you.
There we go.
And so these items were already there, and the rest of this was white. And I was like, I feel like I need to personalize this somehow. And so I added like more flora, more fauna, because it definitely sounds like, you know, like nature is informing each of our works, one way or another. And then for this piece, where the most recent one is this boy, where it says one. I just thought that was funny because you said like how like even as I'm reading my own works, how it's almost like I'm revisiting those thoughts and like coiling around the concepts that I originally wrote about. Um, and then I kind of added like these kind of scribbles, just again, stream of consciousness. composition. And then the writing piece, it says, thinking, hold on, let me see. So it says, thinking about how voice allows us to connect with ourselves and our networks in an authentic and emotional sequence of currents, triggering synapses, coiling. And if I were to elaborate just kind of how I connected to these words, was kind of thinking about how when you're talking about when you shared your poems about, like using authentic language that reminds you of your childhood and just like that playfulness and just saying like punching a hole in someone's chest, what's called mud flap.
Like a lot of adults say to children, they'll stomp a mud hole in their chest for getting
Yeah,
sick.
it's such a random saying, but it sounds so like kind of playful, and you don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you just know like you don't want that probably. And then it was just thinking me like kind of growing up in Florida, just how you can go outside playing in the grass and you got to still have that like that sense of danger because you don't know if there's snakes. It's just like a bunch of untamed like earth. And in that way it's super authentic and beautiful, but at the same time that there's like dangers hidden in that grass that you might not know of.
So I'm gonna go ahead and share. So Imani, I wrote this with your voice in mind. Whoa, I'm dancing on the inside, my core doing twists and turns, excitement conjured from your voice and its innocence ripping through wind, dipping through space, zipping through time as your arm extends, reaching for my ear. Once you get a hold, your determined voice emits imagery through my body. This rose. You propel the swing forward, my legs dangling, eyes peer into the sky. This rose. I go higher, you send me higher. Your voice is enchanted, looping my dreams. Sorry, your voice is enchantment, looping my dreams. On a cloud, treating it as a screen, determined to push me forward before it evaporates, disappearing into thin air. This rose, and I fly. Swallowed by the sky, an empty swing left behind, no more me. I've gone to my dreams, abandoning this seat, purposely speaking with purpose, pushing me forward. You refuse to be quiet, and all because you forced with no remorse. I've landed near the pond where it all began, where my waters are clear and uncontaminated, and even in this new setting, this rose reverberates through my body, and I can feel the way I've been cleansed by the wind as you sent me flying through a gust of change, sending my obedient prop far away. My original grounds is not the only place for me. When you read it, you really used your voice. Like you were like, this rose. So every time you did that, because you could have just been like, this rose, but you were like, this rose, like every time, and every time you said it, I felt like I was being pushed into like the future or like the sky. And I kind of connected it to the imagery from the piece that I shared with you guys earlier about being at the park and like the playground and stuff like that. So yeah, it reminded me of being on the swing. And every time you said this rose, I felt like I was being pushed higher and higher. And eventually I just flew, and then the swing was like just left behind me. And everyone just like, and then I ended up somewhere else because, with the truth and with intention, I believe that we are able to free ourselves from the grounds that we started on, learning that that's not the only place in the world for us, basically. And the power of your voice sounds so intentional that I felt like I was being pushed to be more as a person and pushed to not be reluctant in my choices and in life, and to literally just like go and do what I know I want to do.
Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of what you wrote resonates with the intentionality of the piece, though, just because, like, when I said this rose, like, I preferenced it because it was a calling of the ways in which sometimes we feel so pressured to stay in a situation because this is that, this is that, this is, this is that thing. So I think it was like a call to action for like the ways in which you heard it. Like I wanted that impact, like that was the main thing of like wanting my like readers to hear it and have an understanding of, well, what is this for you, and you interpret that differently, which is the beauty of it.
Yeah. And I just want to thank all of you for sharing and using your voices to express these things and allow it to touch us, touch each other. Um, and I feel really grateful to get to experience the power of that. Thank you all. And I really hope that there's something that whoever uses this can get out of it or get from it or the experience.